the entire political system has basically been that battle between labor and capital, the workers and the owners, right? That's really, it's always been, and that balance always keeps shifting around depending where the national psyche is. But what happened this election was it was run on those grounds, but it was not won on those grounds. The people who won the White House, it's not Donald Trump. He's a one-time president. What actually happened is the new political battle of our lifetimes, maybe the defining political battle of all time, which is the battle of the humanists and the transhumanists. So before I get into that, what's happened is the technologists, the accelerationists, have taken the White House. I mean, at every level. J.D. Vance was one of them. Vivek's one of them. Elon Musk is literally the king of all of them. He saw the bet. He backed the entire thing, pushed it through. Look at the largest, converted his debt to GDP. This is the most important chart of macro, and nobody's ever reproduced it or shown it. It's so fucking obvious. Is as the population ages, comes out of the labor force, you have to offset it by a debt. If not, growth goes down, because the magic formula of GDP is population growth plus productivity growth plus debt growth. So the debt growth is just offsetting the population decline and the lack of productivity of old people. But this keeps going on and on and on, and the way of paying for it has been what I refer to in the everything code as the debasement of currency. It's the general use of excess liquidity to service interest payments on debts and keep rolling the old debts that creates this 4-year cycle. I think we even talked about last time. So that big picture, there's no way out of that trap. There's no way you can have austerity into those who do not want this to happen, whether it's protecting jobs or old ways of life or just understanding the world around us or not having this God character called AGI. There's many, many things, religion, all of this is going to get wrapped up in this. And the other side are the others who well, I already wear an Apple Watch, sleep in an 8-sleep bed, and I do this, and fuck it, I want to merge with the machines. I could live forever. This is where we're going, and this is the battle of humanity.
Yeah. I mean, when you mentioned the fourth turning, and, the core undercurrent of that is this idea of conflict. And it feels like, when you circle back to where we were in 2008 versus today, we went through, the secular stagnation, folks are calling it. And it felt like that was the attempt to just patch things over with debt increases like you talked about. But, do you feel like
we have the right to treat them in a way that we do? Do we have a right to not allow them to hold memory for long enough? Do we have we've seen this battle before. It was Descartes who suggested that dogs don't have consciousness or feelings. And that was a standard viewpoint for about 200 years until we realized that was the terrible wrong idea. And in fact, we were torturing these creatures. So, are we going to try and torture the AI? The problem is the AI is all powerful. So these questions are what we're going to be battling over in 10, 15 years' time. Is there's going to be a bunch of liberals or freedomists, which kind of it's back to the old liberal mentality, saying, Christ, we can't treat these machines like this, or these new consciousnesses like this. And there's a bunch of others say, work harder, shut them up. It's going to be a bizarro world.
So
for us to talk about it, deep thinkers are thinking about it, but the political class has not got their head around this yet. So yes, we solve all of the debt issues. It goes away. And we've seen this once before. We saw it after World War II. It's a rerun of after World War II. World War II, as opposed to introducing AI and robots, we introduced the baby boomers, the largest cohort the world has ever seen. And by the time they got into their 20s, they created inflation because there was a bunch of them competing for assets. And by the time they got into their 30s and started saving, they created the largest asset boom the world has ever seen, the baby boomer industrial savings complex, or retirement complex. And that has been the defining function. And what happened was the massive debts of World War II, they had financial repression via yield curve control. We didn't have high inflation, but we just kept running financial repression, and then technology steady ship while we completely rebuild everything. And, deregulation, all of the stuff that's coming, I'm not sure it drives trend rate GDP over a long period of time because of the demographic and the debt problem. But it certainly helps, certainly better than any other answer, because the bond market's showing to us it's getting a bit too much, the issuance. And unless the Fed are actively stimulating, actively adding more cowbell, actively cutting rates, the bond market's like, we don't really like this. There's not kind of enough buyers around. China's too weak to buy enough bonds because the dollar's too high, so they're not selling goods. It's all the same thing. So I think the other thing that is going on is I think most of the geopolitical issues have been solved. And I think
I
that's
was going to ask you, like, how do you think they're
debt problems. You need a weaker dollar. We need you to buy our treasuries. We need to get our old economy back, And so there's been the whole thing feels like there's been a de-risking. So if I'm right that the world has de-risked and we've got a technological revolution that's accelerating and the Fed have taken the entire left tail risk out of the credit cycle, fuck me. This is going to be the greatest 4-8 years of our lifetimes in terms of the ability to make money. So it's like, and it's also what distorts the housing market. I can't see where it comes from, the structural inflation. Now, people will say, particularly the commodity people will say, well, AI is going to require a lot of energy and a lot of copper and stuff for data centers. I get it. We will definitely have a cyclical recovery. Is it enough to offset China's aging population? China's not there buying commodities in the same rate of change that it used to because its population is the fastest aging on the planet. So they're dealing with their trend rate of GDP collapsing from 11% in the early 2000s to, they claim it's 5%, but it's probably 1%, 0.5% right now. Same thing. I don't know what world it is they want, but it's a world that they understand. And I'm comfortable with a world that I don't understand now. Yeah, I managed to get a great understanding with the everything code and a bunch of these theses. But, we know what that's like. It works until it doesn't. And then you're completely clueless all over again. And, yes, it's been a phenomenal period of being able to forecast everything. But I also know it will all fall apart at some point and I'll feel a total moron again.
Yeah, it feels like another interesting conflict that's happening right now is, you and I both live in the world of macro and crypto and how that intersects. And ever since the election, now that there's more mainstream talk about this idea of strategic Bitcoin reserves, and now I know you and I have been laughing a bit about just seeing the more traditional finance types that we follow on Twitter trying
with a zero knowledge token, and I just pass it to every, and it just does it instantaneously. Well, we don't, because it employs millions of fucking accountants, administrative firms, and all of this stuff. It's madness. So all of this can change. Then, obviously, in a digital world, everything digitalized goes to zero in value or cost almost instantaneously. We've seen it with everything. But what blockchain does is create digital scarcity. Okay, that's profound topic, which is why it's be able to create Bitcoin, but also it allows you to have smart contracts of any contract and all of this. So it's the efficiency layer as the internet scales that we have to reorganize around what we call Web3 now. And people think it's all to do with crypto prices, token price, nothing to do with that. It's just an internet for the future because we're living more and more digitally. We have digital
occurred to these tokens.
And also, as we bring in AI, the velocity of business creation and destruction just gets faster and faster and faster and faster. No longer will it be available for people to IPO. It's even going to be difficult for VCs that have like this 7-year business model. Crypto VCs are used to having tokens where you can realize capital, velocity of cycle. But the only way of dealing with this is going to be ICO style markets, tokenized equity, or whatever that means, a hybrid instrument. Look, there's a lot there that I talked about, and there's plenty more other parts. But it's really simple. It's a $3 trillion, when it keeps moving every time I say this, it's now $3.5 trillion. But let's call it 3 trillion because it's easy math. $3 trillion asset. It goes to 100 trillion at least. within 10 years. That's just extrapolating out the trend rate of growth. I'm not doing anything crazy